Video on Hawaiian history, and in this one, we want to talk about Hawaii tourism in the 1960s because this really becomes a very transformational time for Hawaii and transition for Hawaii. So, a little introduction here, just as a reference. At this point, um, at this point, Hawaii has been a territory for pretty much about 50 years now, and Hawaiians have voted to become a part of the state because it was a kind of awkward position for Hawaii because they were a territory of Hawaii, thus, or they were a territory of the U.S., and thus the U.S. was, in a way, being able to take all these advantages of Hawaii without the benefits for Hawaiians. And so Hawaii at this point was very much so in agrees that they wanted to become a state to the US. And so we start seeing the debate about statehood, which becomes a part of a broader conversation about US foreign policy. And that's what we hope to delve into today with this presentation. So first on our list is we want to talk about what the U.S. And how the U.S. sees Hawaii. Hawaii is very much so an asset to the U.S. at this point, and for the most part, um, U.S. Congress and leadership is recognizing that. But there was some hesitancy within the Southern Democrats at this point because, like most at that time, especially any type of racial integration, there was a lot of hesitancy. And they asked a lot of questions like, what does this mean for an influx of immigrants through Hawaii? Because they weren't as familiar with Hawaii, they just they would make assumptions as to the ease that Asians will make it into America from this. And this is coming off the back of the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1942 that was just recently abolished. Um, and then also in the middle of this, we also are in the middle of the civil rights movement. And so there is quite a bit of racial discrimination still taken and on the front center stage with white Americans and Japanese people, Chinese people, Hawaiian people, and Black people. And so we're seeing that kind of dominate the conversation as well. And that's what actually has stemmed this whole situation. In the middle of this Cold War, we are seeing communist countries very much so gaining ground with criticism of the US due to all the issues of racial relations that are taking place with specifically Black Americans. Um, and so this is a part of a broader soft power diplomacy, per se, by the US to better the image of the US in the world. And so statehood serves that purpose as well as it's a medium for them to become an established political or Pacific constituency in the Pacific Rim, which is going to encompass Japan, China, um, all the small Micronesian islands, New Zealand, Australia. And so they, the US from this point has put a lot of emphasis on European diplomacy, European commerce and trade, and really need to shift the focus over to Asia because Asia is becoming now a dominant player in manufacturer and exporter of goods. And so we see this hesitancy. Even it was even to the point where um, Southern Democrats were also claiming that, well, could be practically communist, and it's very prone to communism because Hawaii also has a very rich history with China and Chinese immigrants. Prior to the U.S. annexation, there's a lot of Chinese history, Japanese, and other Asian history um, as a result of the labor movements that were taking place in Hawaii. And so when we combine this message of the world needs to decolonize by America, and that we need to have a place in the Pacific Rim, we see that statehood becomes a viable option. And so when we look at this boom in the 1960s, we're seeing that now the U.S. is encouraging a lot of mainlanders to come to Hawaii and experience um, everything that Hawaii has to offer, all the cultural diversity that it has to offer. And this was a part of this also is a part of a broader plan for more racial tolerance to be implemented in the U.S. and hopefully mainlanders can go and experience Hawaii and have a better walk away with a personal enrichment of better understanding Asian people as well. But on the other prong of that goal was also to have Asian players, especially Chinese communists, to come in and be able to see an America that looks very different than what the government is telling them. See an America that is open, that is inclusive, that has diversity, um, that celebrates Asian culture with festivals. And um, this also is a big time because we see the establishment of the Polynesian Culture Center coming. And during the 60s is when we see that becomes a very pivotal tourist opportunity for um, an education of a lot of the other Polynesians. And so this was a lot of um, to be able to establish some type of authority in the Pacific Rim area. And Hawaii was this kind of uh, the absolute best case scenario to allow U.S. congressmen of what um, should be America and what America means to the Asian world. And so it becomes a very valuable tool. And so we see that Hawaii is being used as a gateway state in a way, and there's plenty of arguments that are making that case, plenty of arguments that make it against it. But overall, this does seem to be a sense of foreign policy where America wants to be a player in the Pacific area, and Hawaii is the way to do that. California was a way, but um, with the physical distance and the geolocation of Hawaii, it has a much stronger and tremendous impact. One thing that's important too about this is that Hawaii became a massive venue for many Asian diplomatic meetings and sessions because it was a shorter flight for most of these countries, as well as it also offered, again, another way for these ambassadors to see that America celebrates Asian culture, and Hawaii is the precipice of that. And as we look at just this concept of decolonization, one thing to add to this is also adding on to the Wilsonian moment in World War One when the U.S. is calling for de-imperialism, decolonization, and really establishing language to self-determination and independency for a lot of these colonies who desire it, who desire autonomy and independence. And so, um, by establishing Hawaii as statehood, this is them staying on their word that Hawaii should be a part of the state and should have all the benefits of the state. It should not just be a territory. And so, with that, we are going to see that the political and physical landscape of Hawaii drastically changes. And um, it is important to note that there is a conversation that could be had and is being had that decolonization was kind of a undertone of expansionism, and so this was a part of U.S. expanding their influence into the Pacific. So yes, again, Hawaii has a rich cultural history, um, but that history is complicated with the U.S. And so we do want to recognize that while a lot of native Hawaiians, there is a lot of issues between Hawaii and the U.S. this was, as we zoom out, a broader picture of U.S. foreign policy. And much of what we see Hawaii as today, and much of the tourism that we see in Hawaii today, really has a lot of roots going back into the 60s with statehood. Again, this completely changed from most of Hawaii's revenue and industry and economy being surrounded around agriculture, such as sugarcane and pineapples and a lot of other products like that, tropical products, to primarily form of tourism. And then we start seeing a massive importation of goods and a less reliance on self-sustaining and Hawaii Hawaii grown agriculture. And so it's an interesting topic. There's a lot more to break down within tourism, in which I will do. Um, it's it's really amazing thing to look at all the initiatives that were being taken place by the federal and the state government to institute this kind of face of openness and diversity, um, because there are true moments and real humane players within that who are trying to make sure that um, we as Hawaiians were getting the representation that was deserved, that was befitting of us. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this video thus far. I have a lot more to create, and all this is going to center around Hawaiian history. That is the goal and focus and of mine, because Hawaii plays a massive role in America's history, and um, it is a understudied, but definitely under discussed and talked about history. And with there being so many people who come to visit Hawaii, I think it would just be a great place to learn more about where people are visiting and the history that is behind that. And so, hopefully, we'll have some more videos soon. And thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.